My name is Jared Otto, and I am a sound designer with Audio Design Desk. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I designed a short clip from the film Attack the Block using Audio Design Desk. First, here's the clip. Alright, so as you can see, this is a very intense scene, all leading up to the alien crashing through the door. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the end, right where the alien crashes through the door, and I'm going to drop a riser. If you couldn't hear it already in the clip, there are multiple risers all building up to this one moment, so that's where we're going to start. I can easily cycle through risers in Audio Design Desk. Now I'm searching for risers that are going to be longer, because I do want one that extends for the entire length of the clip. And that one's not bad. Well, let's get a second riser under here to try to make it a little more intense. Well, that first one was great. I do kind of want more of a synthy sci-fi sounds. I also added in a hit, added in a second hit, and I'm going to put a transition here. The transition just gives it a little last second push on the riser right into the hits. As you can see, I'm playing around with the hits here a lot. I'm looking for a metallic hit, something higher pitch. I'm going to trim the front of that riser with a fade. Yeah, that riser tail is really nice there, so I'm going to keep that. Cool. We've got some rumble in our hits. We've got the high ends metallic of the hits. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'm going to add a transition just at the very front to ease us into the scene, since this is just a clip. And I'm looking for other places to drop hits and transitions. So I'm putting a transition where the bike comes across and when he opens the door, just to give it a little bit more weight, a little more meaning. This transition's off just a bit. That transition doesn't really work. I'm going to move this one over since it's that transition was a little less intense. I'm going to move it towards the beginning, and the one that was a little more intense, I'm going to move it towards the end. Saw that I needed another transition where the moped goes across. The transition I had there was a little too intense, a little too long, so I made it quieter, faded out the end. Awesome. So now I think that a lot of the sound design is there. I'm going to add some music. I'm looking for action, horror, thriller, maybe a little bit of sci-fi. I'm going to find something that's consistent, rising, is not rock and roll. I'm letting the music play out so I can find the best part of this cue. So I'm using our slip tool here to basically move which part of the region plays. Awesome. I really like that. The music's intense at the beginning, and then the halfway point, right when the kid turns the corner and the alien is chasing him, that's when the drums start to come in that music track. So I think that's going to work really well. Now that that's in, we're going to start moving into the Foley here. First things first with Foley, I like to start with the footsteps. It's very noticeable. It's easy to assign to a trigger. That way we can just go through and drop all of them at once. Based on the clip, I could tell they were walking on concrete, but not just that. It looked like it had just rained, as the concrete was a little bit wet. So we're looking for tennis shoes on concrete with a bit of a wet crinkliness. I found one that I liked, so I'm going to assign it to trigger 1 here. Now when I go back to the beginning, I can play through the video at 1/3 time. And every time I see a footstep, I hit the 1 key and a footstep will be assigned. Just got to look for how the body moves when they're not actually showing the feet hitting the ground. They were all jumping up and down there, so I added a lot of footsteps. And then it's just him running at a consistent pace. Some feet shuffling here to get the door closed. All right, let's mute all of the sound design and the music. All right, for the most part, a lot of this is in the right spot. Obviously, the gain needs to be changed on some of these to give some depth. Basically, there are a lot of footsteps that are much further away from the camera. There are some footsteps that are much closer. I saw another couple footsteps there that I missed. And as I'm starting to go through frame by frame, I'm noticing that the sounds I thought were pretty much in place are just a couple frames off here and there. It's hard to notice that when the video is playing in full time. I don't really care for that footstep sound, so I'm going to delete it and just trigger a new one. Then I gotta change its gain to match the other footsteps. These footsteps sound right, rhythmically and timing. It's just they're a little late. Gets a little too consistent with the footsteps, right where they should be shuffling. So I gotta move them in, cut some, make it a little tighter. And I noticed a few extra footsteps at the end that I missed. All right, so it's just some minor adjustments to the gain on these footsteps. Just to kind of blend them into each other a little bit better. Gave those footsteps a little bit of a crescendo leading up since he was coming off the ground and then getting a little more speed as he was running towards the door. Wanted to give it a little bit of a crescendo there to make it sound like his footsteps are running towards the camera and to keep them from being so static. But now the footsteps are in, I gotta move to these mopeds. I'm looking for something shorter and higher pitched since it's not really a motorcycle. That's closer to what I'm looking for. All right, that last one was right in my pitch range, and I also noticed that its panning goes from more right to left, which is good because that's what's happening in the scene. Now I need a screeching of the wheels. That has some wheel screeching, but it's going to be too hard to solo the screeching out from the rest of the car. Thankfully, I know a little shortcut here. Yes, I know that we have a monster sound that, when layered correctly, sounds exactly like screeching of wheels. It's a little loud and it's a little long. I'm going to have to fade it and blend it in a little bit here. Yeah, I'm looking for something that closes, just because I know that the sound of the wheels coming down with like the shocks, and you can tell by the way it kind of shakes a bit, there would be a little bit, so light metal rattle to it. This is exactly what I'm looking for. It just doesn't sound right because it needs a couple more layers, some things to kind of glue it together, as well as it needs to be balanced and mixed a little better to make one solid sound effect. So again, that one has a rattle, which is really what I'm looking for. I'm checking to see if we have anything that's getting in the car, because like when you first put your weight down on a seat in a car, you kind of hear a bit of that, like the metal moving with the springs on the wheels. And since there's a bit of that when the wheel of the moped comes down, let's see if I can find it. I tried pitching it up to see if I could get higher pitch, but I'm getting too much distortion on that. I'm eventually just going to have to bring it back down to the regular pitch. I think that that initial motorcycle moped sound really came together. So now I got to go and find a sound for the second moped. Now this one we can get away with a little bit more, because if we try to make it too high pitched or too much like a moped, since we spent so much time doing that on the first one, it would sound too close to the original. So I'm looking for not just a moped sound, but something that sets it apart. I like that this one kind of has a reverb that sounds like a parking garage. I cut the region here because I wanted it to have an immediate drop off in sounds when the camera cuts away. So by cutting the region and then changing its gain, I get that immediate cutoff. Now I need an even faster sound though for when it crosses the camera going through the door. So by combining different sounds, different lengths of motorcycle pass-bys, now I'm going back to find sounds for the opening of the door right before the motorcycle passes through. It's a heavy door from the way it looks. It's part metal, part wood. I would lean more towards metal. So if I can find just a metal sounding opening, then maybe a bit of a metal screech because he's pulling it open so fast. And then I'll probably look for something that has a little bit more weight to layer under it. All right, there's the metal screeching that I was looking for. Obviously, it goes way too long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim the beginning of this off, move it over. So now I'm looking for a metal crash sound for when the moped crashes into the elevator here. I believe this is the sound of a trash can being knocked over. Great. The two different sounds of the trash cans being knocked over blend in very well. Now I need the clicking of the elevator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to clicks. I'm going to find one that I like. I'm going to assign it to my second trigger since footsteps are on one. All right, there are more than a few problems with that, so I'm just going to restart that. So now we just got to clean up the gain on these. Move it in a little bit tighter since he's clicking it more frantically. Now I'm going to look for an elevator sound. There we go. That's the elevator ding I was looking for. So I'm going to trim the file up to the ding. I'm going to cut off the tail of this. I'm going to fade it out just at the ends. And I get really lucky that elevator sound dings twice, and it happens to align perfectly with the film clip. So now I'm moving on to the bike. I'm looking for intense spiking, since he's coming in very fast. I'm going to trim off the front of that clip a bit just so it doesn't have a fade in. About there, right when he goes to drop it is where I'm going to cut the region. I moved the region a bit because I noticed that you can hear where force is being applied to the pedals and it wasn't aligning with his legs. So again, I'm looking for crashing sounds. I want something to fit him falling with the bike onto the grounds. That first sound I was using for like the body fall of him falling with the bike kind of sounds like feet shuffling. So I moved that region back to the elevator spot here to give his feet more of a shuffle. As I was looking for a metal crash sound, I found another sound that seems like it would be a door opening. It's a much heavier door creak than the one I was using earlier. So I'm going to layer that in. Now that one sounds light. It has some clanginess to it from like a chain rattling, which would happen on a bike. It also has just enough weight to add some intensity to the scene. So for now, I think the bike and the bike crash is good. I'm going to move on. The next thing I notice is the monster. I want to sound for right when the monster comes around the corner. Ooh, that's a good monster sound. Especially for when the monster's running. It sounds like a heavy pants. I like the gutturalness of this. Trying to layer it, see if it'll give more of a unique monster sound, but at the same time, it's not really coming together. I'm not sure I need to layer it. Trying out some different combinations of the sounds here. That animal sound sounds more like a lunge, so I moved it later. Alright, and by moving those two sounds around, it kind of sounds more like the monster's breathing as he's running along. Alright, and then I finally found a sound there that's more along the same tone and pitch as the other monster sounds, which allows me to create one consistent sound. So now I gotta find a door closing. So I want something heavy and metallic. But I'm also noticing that it slides to a shut, so it's probably not gonna have as much of a slam that you would think. I like the back half of that sound better. It sounds like the door locks. So I found a door that has a slide and a nice closed sound. Combined with the sound of the locking door, it's much closer to what we're looking for. While looking for this, I found a garage door, but then it occurred to me that the garage door sounds a lot like an elevator, like the elevator shaft. It also creates a nice sense of glue for the rest of the sounds that were there. It's a nice little environmental touch. But back to the door, I still want something to kind of slide to a close or slowly close. And then I also wanted to have a nice tight lock sound with a little bit of rattle. I like the sound of that. I think if I move it to the beginning of when the door's being closed, it'll give it more of a weight like they're actually pulling it. Now I need a crashing sound, and that very first one I auditioned sounded pretty dang good. I even like the bit of a static at the end because I know it's supposed to be an alien, and the static changes it from being totally organic, and except now it's got a bit of a sci-fi static flair. Now we need the monster biting into his leg. We need to find some good horror crunch and bloody sounds. A lot of these crunches are a little drawn out and a little too quiet. I want more of a quick rip and shred. Change my search definition here to be more of a stab. See if we can find like a blade moving around in flesh. A lot of these I'm getting too much blade, too much sword. And I just want the flesh. So I did find one that was more flesh than blade. By putting a small fade at the beginning there, I get even less of the sword and more of the actual fleshiness of it all. And that's a great initial bite impact, but I want a lot more gory, bloody sounds coming afterwards. All right, so let's see how all the Foley sounds. All right, there's a lot of really good stuff there. A few balance issues here and there, but overall pretty good. So now for the footsteps, I want to go back and add fabric moving. Just in general, there's a lot of like jeans and sweaters. So I'm going to assign denim to my third trigger here, and every time I see a footstep, I'm going to trigger that. Okay, so I got all of them together. I want to move these tracks up with the footsteps just to keep them together since it's basically doubling. I'm going to highlight all of the denim and I'm going to change all their gain at once. And see, now you can hear a little bit of the fabric when they move. Now I'm going to move on to finding some sort of ambience to hold all of it together. It looks like a parking garage in a city, but late at night, so there wouldn't be too much other sound. And it turns out the city skyline is a fantastic ambience to use. I'm just going to drag it to the beginning here. Let it play with everything else, just change its gain a little bit. I'm going to cut the ambience right at the end of the clip. All right, the sound design and music is a little loud for everything else, so I'm going to bring all of that down, and I'm going to bring all the Foley up. Now I got to mix all the Foley in with the sound design elements. Still, a lot of the sound design is too loud. I've noticed that I can't really hear any of my footsteps anymore, so I do want to bring those up. Couldn't really hear the doors sliding. I'm I'm going to put a fade on that riser so it doesn't go on for so long afterwards. All right, first preview here. Okay, and that's pretty much there. That's sounding really good. There's just a few minor balance things I have to do. I have to flip the stereo on a couple sounds. I have to change a couple to mono, as well as I have to solo out the dialogue from that clip. But otherwise, it is all in and good to go.